Hi, I'm Paul Roberts, and this is Conscious Counseling 101, and this is a special request video about why the Bible is so important. Let me ask you something. I don't care how old you are. Have you ever read the whole Bible? Do you know anyone that's read the whole Bible? Have you ever had a discussion or an argument with anybody that has not read the whole Bible? Why would you ever go through your life and tell anybody else about the Bible or anything in the Bible if you have not read the whole Bible? Why do you think that what you know is enough? I speak from experience. I once thought I could look up a verse and find an answer for any problem. That it worked like a dictionary. Well, maybe it does, but it works in many different ways. Let's say it's real. I'm going to say for the purposes of this video that it's all real, okay? But I'm going to say it's living. It's not just real and literal, it's living. It can be so many things, so many ways you can use it, even like a dictionary. But here's the one thing that so few people are getting. It also works as an entire, all-encompassing story, with Jesus being the cornerstone of the whole thing. Now, a keystone or a cornerstone is something that holds together the most pivotal pressure point of a large structure. All the pressure is on that. It's so important that that is strong. Now, what if you just had that? What if you just had that? What if you just had that? And you didn't have the archway, or the bridge, or the building, or anything. You just had that. So many people that haven't read the entirety of the Bible and understand the context just have that. When you go to church, when you study the Bible, when you talk to someone, when you formulate what you're going to do in your life as your life comes to you, if that's all you've got, it's a wonderful toolbox. But how many of you have seen another person's toolbox and said, "Oh, I don't have that tool in my toolbox. What does it do?" What good is a toolbox to you if you don't know what the tools do and how to use them, and then in the context of how they work with all the other tools? I have so far, to the best of my knowledge, not met anybody else that I've spoken with that's read the entire Bible. And so, when we talk, so much is lost. We can't talk about anything where we can respond and understand because we don't understand how the different tools work. So first I'm going to say this. The reason for this video today is I was speaking with my father this morning, and he actually said that he liked the things that I said when I make some of these conscious counseling videos, especially when they have to do with religion or the Bible or our spirituality or the way we view the world based on some of the things that we can learn from the Word, the living Word. And I was surprised because I thought that he just tolerated I'm his son and he listens only because I'm his son. I didn't know he actually enjoyed it or got anything out of it. Very inspirational. Because I'm if you've seen some of my other videos, I feel very alone a lot of the time. I have a very hard time identifying with anybody else. And when just one person says, yes, I'm getting something out of that, that's enough. Now when I do counseling, if I know that I'm helping or giving what needs to be given, I know I've done my part. Even if they can't put it together and make their life work, I know that I have given what's been asked of me. So I know I've done something great. And I'm glad to do that, even in the most modest way that I do it. But when you come to not understanding the cornerstone that Jesus is to the Bible, and not understanding the context, and not having everything, and even looking towards the farmer and the sky is red, what the end days might look like, or Revelations, and just thinking about what it could be that we're doing and formulating in our lives every day that is going to make up what is necessary for those end days to come, and not being aware of them, and not following the commandments of Jesus so that we will know him, like he says, and not understanding who he is or where he came from. All we're doing when we do this is holding that cornerstone, that toolbox. Yeah, we might reach in and say, that's a good tool, I can use that. I know how the saw works, or I know how the hammer works, or I know how to turn a screw. But do I understand all the other tools and what they mean? Remember, we're to be greater than those that have come before and have seen and then believed. We are not seeing and yet believing. We're to be greater than. When those fishermen and farmers were approached by Jesus, they immediately left their nets and their boats and they went with him. But you got to remember something. They already had the context. They were the chosen people. They knew who they were. They didn't need to study that. They just knew something was wrong. They just knew there was something more. And immediately when they saw what it was, they left. They didn't know what it was, but they left and followed. Well, us today, we don't know what that is. We don't live it. We're not those people. If we're not those people, how are we going to get the context? We have to first find out who they were if we're ever going to rise above them. Who are they? They're people that aren't like us. They're people that came from a group of people that had the covenant created for them. The special chosen people. If we're going to understand what's in that toolbox, in that cornerstone, and the value of that cornerstone, we have to understand the people and where they came from. It's a given. They already knew who they were when Jesus came to them. So they didn't have to learn that. They just had to know something's wrong and follow. But we do. How many so-called Christians do you know of, or proposed Christ followers that you know, don't understand the concept of where Jesus came from and why he is so important and why he's the cornerstone that the builders of that old covenant rejected? We have to understand that. If we don't understand that, then just knowing how one or two of the tools works might save us, might even help another. But it doesn't help with the full picture. And that's what this video is about. We want to know what the whole picture means. I said to my father this morning, when he said that he likes what I present, I said, well, yeah. And I asked him, have you ever read the whole Bible? And he says, well, I'm very familiar with it. And when I hear preachers preach, I'm familiar with it. But I don't know that for sure that I've ever read the whole Bible. He's older than me by a couple of decades, at least, I think. He hasn't read the whole Bible. I've had a unique life. And I said to my father, you have to know it all. If you don't know it all, how can you apply it to your own life? No, you can't know it all. No, well, maybe I used the wrong words. You have to have the whole context and the whole understanding so that you're in a perpetual state of prayer, so that when you walk down the path of life and you encounter the circumstances, you've done what Jesus has asked, you've kept his commands, and you know him. You have to be able to know who he is so that when every obstacle that you pass comes at you, you can just pull right into that toolbox and use the appropriate tool, know how it works, and identify everything that's coming at you while it comes at you. Otherwise, you can't make the right decisions. You can't guide your whole life. You can't have your foundations built on that cornerstone. Instead, your foundations would be built with cracks and sand that can be washed away, but not the rock. Now, I said this in many other videos, but I'll say it now. Why is this allowable and the way of much of the formalized church today? Why? I talked to my wife this morning at breakfast. What does every church have in common? Almost every church has in common the idea that they have a formalized structure and body that has to come and congregate in a building that costs money and has funds that are needed to maintain that. That's one of the things they have in common. The other thing they have in common is all the body looks at the one person who's the leader for the guidance. What is wrong with that? Let's use two of Jesus' teachings that we should be familiar with. One, Jesus said not to put our faith in man or call any man father. Okay? The whole idea that you're looking at that one man, that one pivotal point. Doesn't have to be the Pope, just anybody up there. And these people out here don't have the whole capacity to be the church on their own with one or more gathered together in his name. But they think they have to be there in that structure that requires money. Is already a problem. But you can have money. You don't have to think that much about it. I mean, Judas carried the change purse around and they knew there was something there, but a lot of times maybe there wasn't. Maybe sometimes they had to go and let their hands scrape along the outside of the garden and have some wheat fall off into their hands. A lot of times they said, don't go over the second time around the outsides, so that those that didn't have would have the ability to go around the outsides and find and scavenge. Why was this even said? Again, we have to go to context. This was said because God already knew that chosen people were going to fall and some would be subjected to curse. But he didn't want everybody to be subjected to curse. He knew that some were righteous or would willingly be righteous if they could find the way, but it wasn't available to them when the priests went into the holiest of holies and they came out and told you how you needed to be. There wasn't another link until the Holy Spirit came, until Jesus came, to truth. And so those that started to fall into what we call the curse, in the Old Testament, it was said that if you follow, you'll be blessed with life and prosperity and health and many things. But if you don't, you'll become cursed. Well, Jesus said that the work of the Lord is to take care of widows and orphans. Why is that? Because those people weren't necessarily unrighteous. They didn't necessarily deserve to have a limited or a harder fate. They became like that because the leaders of society, the men, the way it was structured, some of them fell away from what they should have seen and done. And thusly, the orphans and the widows became more vulnerable to life's slings and arrows than they ever should have in that chosen people covenant. That's why that teaching is so important. Would you know how that tool worked if you pulled it out of your toolbox? Would you know why that's important? Some would, some wouldn't. But my point is, I'm using just this as an example. If you don't understand where he came from, what the problems were beforehand, and how he resolved them and why, then what he gives in just his words in his life won't be as meaningful. One of my favorite verses is when the woman under the table is there, and he was gathered with some of the brothers of the chosen people. And the woman wanted something from him. She saw that he had something great to give. And he said, I did not come for you. I came for these people. I'm congregating with them. And I just, when I grew up as a child, I always thought, Jesus is there for everybody, right? Jesus loves the little children and all the children of the world. Red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. That's what I came up with in Sunday school. So I never thought there was any such thing as racism, or somebody's lower than another, or one chosen people is there, Jesus came for or wasn't. Well, I never thought that way. And, after the crucifixion and the temple curtain was torn and all Jesus' work was done, and now, of course, that is the way it is. There is no one that's elevated above. But back then, when he was sitting at that table, before he had done his work, yes, back then, he was still trying to gather whatever harvest there was from those that were good, that were in that corrupt chosen people, that had not fallen victim to corruption, that wanted to see what Jesus had to offer. And Jesus said, I have not come for you. What he meant was, and this is again context, learn how those tools work in your toolbox. I have not come for you. When the woman saw that, she said, but Master, even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the Master's table. When Jesus heard that, this is one of my favorite messages. He realized she's worthy or more than the chosen people that are easy around, because she sees this even without the understanding that he thinks they might be able to have. And in my opinion, that was the time when it became evident, even before he concluded his work or died on the cross or the Holy Spirit came, that was the time when he realized that he was there for all. And that feeling that she had to say what she said signifies that for us. Now, this is why I'm talking about this. This is the context. My dad says, oh no, you can't know everything. Okay, maybe a bad choice of words. What you need to do is you need to understand the entire context. If you don't understand the entire context, you don't know how the tools work. You don't know what they mean. You don't even know what you're supposed to do with them. Remember, if we are to be blessed because we have not seen and yet believe, we must be at least as high as those who have seen and took all the way to the end days to believe and still got some things wrong. When we look at the Bible and we look at incorporating the lessons into our life, we have to remember we've got to have access to all these tools and knowledge of how they all work on a daily basis, or we cannot live our lives according to it. And if we don't, we won't come to know him. According to Jesus, if we keep his commandments and follow him, we'll come to know him. And this doesn't mean that we'll have proof. We don't even know that Jesus is really the Son of God. We don't know these things. We have faith that he is. Some people insist they do. That's fine. That's just fine. If that's the way your viewpoint and your terminology allows you to say to yourself or to others how you view it, fine. I personally know that I don't know this, and I come from that, a total faith thing. I believe faith is important, more so than certainty, more so than following man, more so than looking for verifiable proof of some other nature. I believe God is intentionally not able to be seen or found in the universe or in our quantum physics, because if you could point it out, everyone would see. I see people all over the internet trying to prove things to one another by arguing ideas. I see constantly. You got the atheists, you got the non-believers, you got the convinced people, you got the formalized church, you got the theologians, you got everything trying to say, this is why, there's a design, it's got to be. All this stuff. Who cares about any of that? If you learn the context that I'm talking about, which can only come from reading and understanding the whole. Now, of course, if I go in there and match myself and my wits with a scholar, I'm probably going to come up short. I'm going to forget names. I'm going to forget dates. I'm not very good at all the wars and all the battles and all the kings and all these different things. But you know what? Neither were those disciples that got out of the boats, left their nets, and followed him either. All we need to do is come up to their level and maybe a little bit above because we haven't seen. We don't have to be scholars and theologians. We have to understand why Jesus is the cornerstone. We have to understand why that's important. And if we do, then we can have the whole archway, the whole bridge, the whole building, everything coming around us, and we'll support it. We've got to walk forward every single day with these things. Now, I had a unique circumstance in my life. I graduated college. My wife graduated college. We immediately fell in love and got married. I decided that the best way to keep something that you love is one of Jesus' teachings. If you find a treasure in the field, you go and buy the whole field. I decided I would buy the whole field. I said, what is God's plan for man and woman? How may I best keep that which I love? So I said, I'm going to buy the whole field. I said, come, let's go to this church. Let's study the Bible. Let's find out what God's plan is for man and woman and embrace that. By embracing that, I felt as though we would have more strength being on the rock and honing one another through the years so that we would know that our love would not fade. And the things and the slings and arrows of this world wouldn't tear us down. So one of the things I did immediately when I got into the movie business, which was right after I got married, when I moved to Florida, I had all this time. I worked in Tampa, Key West, Orlando, all over the place. I had all these long commutes. I used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and commute from Sarasota or Orlando to Key West. 6-hour drive or more. I had all this time, and I'm visually and audibly sensitive, being an artist. So what I did was I used all that time to read the Bible several times over on tape so that I could perceive that better than reading. In reading, I'm not the best. My wife maybe is better at that. She's more of a scholar in that sense. So really early in life, before I really decided what I was going to do, right out of college, I came to understand the context of the entire Bible and the cornerstone and the importance of that before I started my life. Almost like my graduate school from college. So I'm speaking to you from an area of knowing what I'm talking about. When I said to my father this morning, you have to know all these things, or how in the world can you walk through life and know what you're doing? You have to abandon yourself from what man is already doing and saying, because he could have already gotten it wrong. And you haven't indoctrinated the studies the way that he would have. You have to do it for yourself. not call a man father, not go and congregate around a man in a formalized church. Let me just tell you once again, if you haven't seen some of the other videos, what I do not like about the formalized church is that you have to get those people to come back again and again and reciprocate. Even subconsciously, if you're not thinking about it, what you're doing is you're lifting up certain parts of what they need to know and believe and understand, and letting the other parts fall so that they'll continue to come back. Now, I can go so far as to go to some of my older family back in Michigan that still believe this way today, but they can't accomplish what they need to accomplish in Jesus' work without man, without the church. They can't get together as just a few in Jesus' name and call that the church and stand on the rock and he'll be with them. They have to keep coming back and being absolved of their sins, as falling each and every time and coming back and being renewed again. And they have to have the congregation to assure them that what they believe and feel is true. This is a crutch, a handicap. It is not needed. Jesus said that we would know him if we just followed and kept his commandments. What I'm trying to point out is all this that I'm talking about contributes to pulling them in. You got to stay with us. You've got to be part of our body, or we won't have the means continually. And so I remember when I was in the churches I went to when I was a younger child, it was always about why we need to tithe, why we need to give this percent or whatever. So much of that was spotlighted. I mean, yes, the chosen people were told exactly how they had to do the sacrifices, exactly what to do. That covenant, and that's part of the old covenant. And so they said, well, now there's this exactly 10% or whatever. Different ways of looking at it. And this was a focal point, a beam on that, a focus in the Christian church. And I submit to you, one of the reasons why was because it couldn't exist without the reciprocal over and over and over again, shining a light on that part. It needed it so badly. And what this does, in my opinion, this is the stumbling blocks of the new age, the new church, the formalized church that was represented in the stumbling blocks of the chosen people, where they would see what the priests would tell them, and they would get it, the priests would get it wrong and represent it wrong over the course of time so that they could be elevated. They could be elevated in the eyes of men, and they abominated and distorted the word so that that would happen. And then they were exposed to raised or lowered importances of the word and the message to make that happen. Today, the same thing in the formalized church is happening. In order to keep it going, they're focusing more on certain things that keep you going, keep it going, and less on other things, and less on the contextual. My father said, well, I think over time I probably have, maybe heard the whole Bible because in all the pastors I've listened to, well, we don't even know. But how hard is it to put together a 5,000-piece jigsaw puzzle as opposed to a child and his 10-piece or 20-piece jigsaw puzzle? What I'm saying is, if you can't become a theologian or a scholar, at least read the entire Bible at least once so that you see how all the pieces fit together. I have a video that summarizes the Bible in 15 minutes. Take a look at that. You have to be able to look at the whole first in order to understand what the cornerstone means and what those tools are in there and how they relate and what they do. And you have to carry this with you all the days of your life so that with everything that comes down the road, you can respond appropriately. This is why it's so important. And to be in the perpetual state of prayer and to pray the Lord's Prayer so that each day this process is occurring. Each day the daily bread. Each day those things in the Lord's Prayer happen. They can't happen if each day you keep hoping you'll do a Bible study that helps you to somehow see better than you do. Or one day you'll finally finish reading the Bible and everything will be complete. No! Everything has to be complete from day one. That's one of the reasons why I do Conscious Counseling 101. Because with our perspective, even before the problem's solved, we see the solution. And all we have to do now is believe that that solution is our solution. And then everything else becomes molded to that solution, and eventually it becomes that solution through perspective counseling. I hope this has helped today in the general understanding of why the Bible is important and how you need to see the fullness Now, you can go in there if you want to get nitpicky and you're obsessive compulsive. Go and find out what every single tribe's name was. Memorize all the dates of the various battles. Get into the nuances and other books that aren't in the Bible that you might find in other places. Find the history of the earth and see how the people reacted and how they built structures and how they lived and all these other things. Go ahead if you want to, if that's what you need to do. You can do that if you want. It isn't going to raise you higher. It's just going to make it interesting for you, maybe. What I'm saying is, the child's puzzle still has the whole picture on it, even if it's only got 10 pieces. Don't try to make a 5,000-piece jigsaw puzzle that's going to run your life and spend most of your life with only 400 or 500 pieces put together, hoping that someday the other pieces are going to come in. Build the whole first child's puzzle first. Understand the entirety of it first, and then go more and more towards more and more and more and more larger, more multi-piece pictures, and start assembling those puzzles again and again and again and again and again. But first, get the whole. And you won't find the whole in the cornerstone alone. You'll find what to do with the whole. But if you see the plans, and you see the perfectly laid out plans in that cornerstone, and you don't understand what the building materials are, or what the earth's made of, or anything else. What's more, if you receive distortion from a formalized church on what to do, and you don't have any contextual information of the whole, how would you ever plan to build the structure? So I'm not diminishing the cornerstone. It is the most important. Truly it is. But if you don't understand on which you build, and how you build, and what you build, the strength of the cornerstone won't work. It'll still be a grand cornerstone without a building or a structure that you can walk over. This is Paul Roberts, Conscious Counseling 101. I hope this helps in a different way. If you see anybody else trying to illustrate these concepts and you'd like to point out something, do so. I'd like to always be aware of everything else. But I don't know of anybody that's talking like this, and so I'm doing it. That's why I'm doing it. Paul Roberts, Conscious Counseling 101.